Welcome to the Family Banking Show with your hosts Rob, Derek, and John, where we dive into the world of the infinite banking concept and discuss personal banking strategies to secure your legacy and build generational wealth. We're glad you're here, and we hope this episode serves you well.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Family Banking Show. We're your hosts, Derek, Rob, and John. Guys, how's it going this week?
Good. How you doing, Derek?
Doing well, thank you. John?
Yeah, I'm doing well. It's been a great week. Lots of fun connections and just excited about IBC, honestly. Like, it's just been fun to see it click for some people and see it bring hope and peace to some people I've been interacting with recently. So yeah.
That's good to hear. Well, guys, this week we're continuing in Nelson Nash's book, Becoming Your Own Banker. And we're on part 2 or segment 2 of the book, which is discussing the human problems. We're going to fly through a couple of them here. We're going to start on page 29, which talks about Willie Sutton's Law. And we'll discuss the rest of the human problems. And then we'll move on next week to the next section in the book. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
Do it.
Well, guys, Willie Sutton's Law. Willie Sutton was a bank robber, but who can explain what Willie Sutton's Law is?
Well, I think it's summarized by wherever wealth accumulates, someone will try to take it.
Willie Sutton, did you know that's where the term Slick Willie comes from?
Oh,
No.
He's a famous bank robber, and someone interviewed him, right? Why do you keep, after constantly getting caught and constantly getting in trouble, why do you keep robbing all these banks? He said, that's where the money is, and that was his lifelong career, and he's famous for it, and we're going to try to relate it to IBC and how we can make the most of kind of the environment we're in. So Derek, how would you describe that, for equating to practical, real life scenario with regards to IBC?
Yeah, well, everybody has to store their wealth somewhere. And generally, people store it either in their house or maybe a qualified retirement plan or in your bank account. It's unlikely that somebody is stealing stuff from your house on a daily basis. But as one of my mentors has said, everybody's a partner with the IRS. Whether you like it or not, they're one of your business partners. Mm-hmm. And so that is one avenue of taxes, is one avenue where our wealth gets redistributed to fund the federal government. And of course, us as citizens, we benefit from it, right? It's not all bad, but to some of us, we maybe prefer to pay a little less taxes than we are currently. And Nelson has a lot to say about taxes here, guys. What are your thoughts on some of his comments, and what would you like the listeners to pick up on?
Well, so one of the things I'll talk about is, well, we didn't used to pay taxes. Taxes were not implemented until, is it 1913? Is that the date?
As far as income taxes go, yes.
So we were not paying income taxes until 1913, and it was supposed to be temporary. I'm not sure what the percentage was, but it was supposed to be a temporary, and of course it wasn't temporary, right? Nothing the government does if it's taking money is ever temporary. So the government saw an opportunity they saw an accumulation of wealth, and they wanted to get some of it. So that's where the tax code came in. And, as we're talking about permanent whole life insurance was in place and in use in families before the income tax was ever implemented. So permanent life insurance isn't a tax scheme, but it has a lot of really good tax benefits that we'll be talking about here on this episode.
Yeah. So to expand on the problem, right? We're right now just trying to solve a problem. Like an IBC, in this case, solves the problem to not, overpay on taxes, not give the government, more than is maybe legally what you're supposed to be, and figuring out a system where you can recapture not only the interest that you pay to banks, but also the taxes that you would otherwise have to pay, especially kind of in your later years in life. using some of these tax qualified plans. So the income tax, you're right, Rob, was supposed to be a temporary measure, fund a war and then come right back. But we all know it's been over 100 years of income tax, and it's only become a necessary way that the government receives revenue, right? So I don't see it going anywhere anytime soon. And then on top of that, 50 years down the road from 1913, around the 70s and 80s, the federal government implemented tax qualified retirement plans like the 401k. He mentions the HR 10 and IRAs. These are all now solutions to a problem that Nelson says the government created in the first place, where now citizens can lock away essentially funds into an investment vehicle and not pay taxes now so that they can pay taxes later. And the best way I've heard it put is you're compounding not only the growth of your fund, but you're compounding your taxes as well. In that case, to where an unknown bracket, tax bracket that you're going to be in, unknown percentage of income tax you're going to have to pay, which we're trying to avoid, right? I don't think anybody would want me to give you $10 and say, oh, you don't have to pay me back until maybe 30 years from now. And I'll tell you at that point how much you'll owe me and what percentage of that interest that you'll have to pay me. Like, nobody would want to do that. So this is a way to pay now with what's certain, and then guarantee the growth of what you would otherwise be paying in the long run to keep in your system.
Yeah, I got a couple thoughts on that. You reminded me of, so another phrase to line up with that, John, is, do you want to pay tax on the seed? Like if you're a farmer, you buy seed, you pay tax on the seed, or do you want to pay tax on what that seed produces or the harvest? So that's a phrase that kind of lines up what you're saying. But but also reminded me, and when for some reason, and we all believe this, and I don't even know why, I've been, as we've been going through this journey of infinite banking and permanent whole life insurance, you start to see things differently. You start to change the way you think, and you start to think about things a little more critically. I don't know why when I was just out of college and just starting in my job, and you're talking to a financial planner and they're saying, put all your money in your 401k because when you retire, you'll have like no income, so your taxes will be really low. And I'm like, yeah, that's so true. I want to pay tax on a little bit of money when I retire, so then my taxes will be lower. It makes a lot of sense, right? Why did that ever make sense? Why would I ever want to retire with no money, with no income?
Yeah.
But at that moment, it seemed totally logical. Like, oh yeah, I'm going to be making $0 when I retire, so I'll have zero tax. Yeah. Well, then your lifestyle is living with $0. You're living a life of scarcity, and that really never clicked in my mind until, I guess, like 10 years later. After that, I stopped putting money in my 401k. But it just was, why that seems so logical to me makes no sense looking back on it.
Yeah, it's almost like they expect that you're not going to have any expenses in retirement too. Like, you're never going to have to buy a new car when you're 75 years old.
Right. Or you've been you're accustomed to this wonderful lifestyle that you've been blessed with over the last how many years, and the hard work and discipline and the things you've built up. And then now you're just going to downsize your lifestyle because you're retired. Anyway, it's just dumb. It's like we're dumb. When we're at that age, we're dumb. We don't think. And it's people want to keep enjoying life when they're retired, and that requires money, that requires income, and that income will be taxed. So you'll be probably getting taxed as much or more in retirement, especially if you build up a big nest egg and you have to take withdrawals. So listeners, just listening, you want to retire with a big income, not a little income. So you want to be thinking about the tax implications at that point.
I would even caveat that and say you want to retire with a large spendable amount rather than quote unquote income, because income is taxable. We'll talk about, there are other ways of like having a lot of money to spend, but it not be qualified as income.
Yes, and whole life insurance is one amazing way to do that, to have tax-free passive income. You can get a lot of income through your tax-free means through your policy and not be taxed on it. Good point.
So let's talk about what the specific tax benefits are for us in our policies right now. So first off, we are paying taxes on all of our income, whatever that may come from. If you're a W-2 salaried employee, if you have investment income, whatever it may be, the idea is that you pay taxes as much legally as you're supposed to now, and you pay premiums with those after-tax dollars. And then for most people who would, put money into, say, a mutual fund, any growth that they end up accessing or realizing, they would have to pay taxes on, right, as income. But for us in IBC, we actually don't pay taxes on the growth. Derek, you want to explain exactly why that is?
Yeah, there's two ways to access the growth in the policy, or what we would call as cash value. You can either withdraw money out of your policy, and you can withdraw up to the cumulative premiums that you've paid over that time frame, and you can access that and not have to pay taxes on that because you already paid on that premium amount as you put the money into the policy. The other way is access it via what's called a policy loan, which each whole life insurance contract that we design has that feature built in. And what that is you're borrowing the insurance company's money as a loan, and they have certain parameters that they control, and then you have other parameters that you can control. But just to put simply, because it's a loan, it's not recognized by the IRS as income, and therefore it can be accessed without paying income tax on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then the growth in the policy is technically considered the dividends you get. It's interesting though. You'll see if you look at a policy over time, you pay premiums and that builds cash value, and you're not taxed on the dividends that you get each year, but your dividends start exceeding the amount of money you're putting in. So thankfully it's not taxed. It's considered a return of premium, but it's like, well, I put in like X amount of premium and I'm getting X plus amount of return, and it's not being taxed. So thank goodness it's considered return of premium. So you're building tax-free growth in the policy through dividends, and then you can access that money tax-free through policy loans. And so it's a tax exempt vehicle, but if used properly, it's effectively tax-free.
John, why don't you talk a little bit about the death benefit? What's the tax treatment of the death benefit?
Income tax-free. It's amazing, and it's simple, right? Lots of people who have properties or other assets in their estate, when they're estate planning and managing their will and trust, it's very complicated, especially when you're trying to discuss in dollar amounts or even distributions to, heirs or beneficiaries. Like, this is as simple as it gets, where you can just do a percentage of your death benefit to, say you have 5 kids and you want to equally distribute that. You can allocate that exactly how you want to, all income tax free. And that's a huge benefit. Whereas, properties, there's, estate tax that you're going to be subject to, not only on the state level, but federal level. And it just makes things a lot more simple for you to leave an actual, full legacy, to your beneficiaries, rather than leaving more or less, a mess for your heirs to have to work with attorneys and CPAs and everybody to figure out what exactly they're getting after all.
Yep.
And with regard to the estate taxes, that's going to depend upon each individual's net worth. And currently that amount is relatively high compared to what most people have built up as their nest egg or their net worth. And so it not only could it be income tax free, but as John has said, could be even estate tax free, depending on how much net worth you and your family members might have. Guys, I think it's important also to note that the insurance company doesn't set the tax favorable treatment of these life insurance policies. that's determined by the government. And just as with your 401k or IRA, everybody's got to play by the rules that the government has set here. And those rules could change. But none of us know the future. And so what we're trying to do is save and protect our wealth from as much taxes as possible and have it still liquid and accessible, and transfer it to family members in the future. So while those requirements of those laws could shift or move around in decades from now, eventually you just got to say, all right, well, I don't know what the future holds, but I know that this is the best place right now.
Right. Yep. Great point. I would along those lines, Derek, I'd also say though, I feel like I feel less secure having my money in a government sponsored program in terms of the rules can change instantly in those programs. Making a tax law change against life insurance, I feel like that would be a much longer process, a much bigger hurdle. It's not just a flip the switch that the government can do. So I personally feel more comfortable we don't know what the government's going to do in terms of law. But I feel more comfortable having my money in permanent whole life insurance than I do in 401ks, because those rules just change at a new administration, just at the drop of a hat. Life insurance that's a bigger rock to push, I think, to make those kind of changes to. So I still feel more comfortable having my money there.
Yeah, maybe two more thoughts before we move on to the golden rule. One, I would highly recommend anybody to read or actually watch a little short movie called The Power of Zero. Zero taxes is kind of that implication. Very, very good. And obviously IBC and kind of permanent whole life insurance is a major piece of that. And then the second thing is that the reason policy loans are tax-free, are income tax-free, is the same reason you don't get taxed for income if you get a mortgage for your house or a loan for your car. They're treated as loans. And if the government were to change things where we get taxed as though we're receiving income for loans, then that would be a major change that I don't think would ever actually end up happening, because debt and loans are just a major piece of our economy, and for the average citizen to use to purchase homes, cars, whatever it may be. So that's the technical reason that we're not taxed on those policy loans.
All right, guys, let's move on to the golden rule. Rob, why don't you just give us a brief explanation as to what the golden rule is and maybe a couple of things to keep in mind?
Well, I guess first off, when we all hear the golden rule, we think of do unto others as you would have them do unto you, from the Bible. But Nelson puts a spin on it, a clever spin on the golden rule. Those who have the gold make the rules. And I love that saying. I use it all the time. But it's true. If you have the capital, if you are the one in control of the capital, then you make the rules on how the capital is used and who the capital goes to and what it's used for. And so that is that kind of idea of, and we see it every single day in life and globally, those who have the funds make the rules. And what this is allowing us to do, the infinite banking concept via permanent whole life insurance, is build up a capital reserve for our family so that we can start making those decisions, going to our own family banking system so we can make the rules instead of having to abdicate that to the people who have the gold, the banks or wherever you might have to go to, hat in hand, for them, to bless you with some of their gold, so to speak.
It's a perfect contrast to the Willie Sutton law and the 401k. It's not necessarily someone's net worth or what they have total in assets. It's what they have access to in those assets. Locking away funds and saying you have $1 million in your 401k until you're 59 and a half really doesn't mean much. Your rate of return that entire time is essentially zero because you can't access any of it. So it very much, I think it contrasts well with Willie Sutton's law and thinking about the tax qualified plans, so that you can have access and control over the banking function. Like Rob just said, like generally we think of the banks are the ones who have the gold, who have the money, but we can replace the bank in our lives, in our families.
Yeah, there's very little negotiating for most people when they go sit in front of their personal banker and say, hey, I need this loan. You don't really get to control many of the terms of the loan there because they're the ones controlling the gold, the money,
Yep.
so to speak.
Yep.
Nelson does make a comment, though, that says that people are so used to living for today that they have lost this appreciation and value of saving money for the future, building up that cash or having that access to capital. He says that value has all but been lost. And it's still true, even, several years after Nelson's written this book. Like we've talked about the national savings rate in America right now is hovering between 3% and 4%. So in order to do this, I mean, you have to have a mindset change. You got to say, I'm willing to forfeit some pleasures today to have pleasures in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And being able to store it in the tax favored environment that we've already mentioned is the best place that we know how right now. Any other thoughts on the golden rule before we move on?
I'll just say, and we've talked about this in past episodes, that and he mentions in the on page 31 that opportunities will appear, will be enticing, and you will have a much more open mind to those opportunities. If you see a real estate deal, if you see an investment opportunity, whatever it may be, it's not an either or, right? We're talking about an and asset here where we can, have our money growing safely, guaranteed, and take those opportunities from our growing pool of capital and make the rules and be able to negotiate and maybe have an all cash offer for a property, and you get to win out against the competition, even though maybe they offer more, but it's via a loan or whatever it may be. So I'll just say those opportunities will present themselves. They're already, for me personally, coming up like left and right, and I'm just more and more open to pursuing those opportunities.
Yeah, if you have all of your capital locked away and you can't access it, your brain basically turns off to opportunity because you have no means to take advantage of the opportunity. But when you have liquid cash available and it starts to build up quicker than the days are long, but the years are short. It builds up relatively quickly. If you're paying high cash premium deposits into your policy, you're going to have a lot of cash value. And then once you start to realize I have this cash sitting here, I can leverage. You start to see opportunities, and when people know that you have cash that you can leverage, the opportunities come to you. But if it's just stuck away and you won't see it till 59 and a half, you just turn off your brain. Like you're on autopilot and you don't have an opportunity to take advantage of the opportunities that come up.
Yeah, I've got another example somewhat recently here. A family member was interested in thinking about a lakefront property. And there is a home and a garage already on the property, but it's needs to be totally torn down and demolished. It wouldn't qualify for a mortgage. So that right there is going to eliminate probably 90% of potential buyers.
Mm-hmm.
And not to mention, not only that, but it's an off-market deal right now. So this person's in a position of strength if they have a large sum of capital to be able to negotiate with the seller and be able to secure that opportunity. But if they don't have that capital, if, like Rob has said, if it's stored away in some account like your 401k or other tax qualified plans where you don't have the control or access to direct it the way that you want to, you're never going to be able to take advantage of those opportunities when they come up. All right, guys, let's move on to the next section here, which talks about the arrival syndrome. And before we started recording, I just kind of mentioned that the easiest way to summarize the arrival syndrome is just to keep an open mind. What else would you guys like to describe when you're talking about the arrival syndrome? What are some things that we need to be aware of?
Well, I'd say, Derek, the opposite. Keeping an open mind is the opposite of the arrival syndrome. That's the solution to the arrival syndrome is keeping an open mind, right? That the arrival syndrome is we all, and there's areas in our life where we probably have it, where we just think we know everything about a topic and there's nothing more to learn, and we are not open to hearing anything new. Because we don't want to waste our time learning about something if we think we know everything. Yeah, so that's my take on the arrival syndrome.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, everybody knows that person maybe in their lives who knows everything and wants to tell you how much they know and wants to tell you how sure they are of it and that they can't ever be wrong. Um, just in general, I think it's just practical wisdom, not just on a financial, strategy basis, but overall in life, to continue to learn, continue to keep an open mind, to sharpen your understanding of whatever it may be, of finances, of health, fitness, whatever it may be. I think everybody ought to have this open, open arms. Like I'm ready to learn as much as possible, um, and you can grow just so much from that, rather than maybe limiting yourself to the maximum of what you already know, which for most people is, there's a world of knowledge out there, and they probably don't know everything. So, um, especially for IBC being unconventional and not what the mainline financial geniuses would talk about. It does require you to rethink your thinking and have that open mind, to consider something that actually might be better than the conventional way of thinking.
Yeah, I want to provide an example. Conventional, typical financial advice would tell you that the way to build your wealth over time is to chase a high rate of return. And we need to really question that and just think like, okay, is a high rate of return really what I'm after here? With IBC, what is so great about this is it causes us to think about multiple rates of return on the same dollar rather than just one high rate of return on $1.
Yeah.
And do it in a way that's safer, more guarantees already built into it to where you're not gambling. Like you may be in an area where you don't have control over the volatility, like in the stock market. We can't control that. But with infinite banking, Nelson has said, no, you can control the financial environment that you're in right now. And this is the best way to do it. In fact, it seems like the only way to really do it.
Right. Well, it's because it has guarantees. That's nothing else has guarantees. So that is the way you can control your environment. And it's, as infinite banking practitioners and agents, we run into a rival syndrome a lot. I've talked to many people, and they're like, I have literally never heard of what you're talking about. And some are open to hearing more, and some are like, I'm good, And so we encounter that a lot. I think that, that's why Nelson put it in this section in the book, because this is just a concept people just have never heard of, never taught it. And so it's new to them. And, it's like, why haven't I heard of this before?
Yeah.
If it's any good, why isn't everybody else doing it?
It sounds illegal. Are you?
Yeah, it must be illegal.
Pyramid scheme. Yeah.
Right. So yeah, we deal with people with a rival syndrome all the time.
Guys, the last section here of the human problems, Nelson describes it as use it or lose it. What do you think is the point that he's trying to drive home here?
I think just overall, the more you understand how IBC can be used in your life to replace and control the banking function in your life, but also to seize opportunities as they come. If you're not looking for that, you'll lose out on those benefits. This is not saying your policy will cancel if you don't replace the banking function year one, or even year 30, it's the policy, as long as you pay your premiums, it's very straightforward. You pay, they keep it in force, and it'll continue to grow at that guaranteed rate, continue to produce dividends. But you'll lose out on some of the other benefits, especially the banking benefits that come with using it along the way, those living benefits that we call it, to recapture all that interest that you're paying to other banks. And you're not going to do it all in year one, right? You're going to do it over time as your system grows. But unless you're using it, unless you're seeing, okay, wow, I can purchase a car using my policy and control the payback schedule and recapture the interest that otherwise I'd be obligated to pay bank A, B, C. So That's the main thing I see from it. It already has been a point of confusion for people I talk to, where they're like, "Oh my goodness, unless I'm, using it for all my banking needs, then is it going to just cancel on me?" And that's an honest question that I appreciate, and for us to clarify that it's really just all the other benefits that you would perhaps lose out on, more of an opportunity cost there, unless you use it.
Yeah. I'd add on to that too. We recommend to our clients use it. Like just take out a small loan, take out $500, pay it back. Like just going through the mechanism of how that works kind of opens people's eyes up to, oh, it's that easy. Oh, okay. It's just weird. Like if you don't, it's like a muscle. If you don't use it, it atrophies. And so being able to leverage your policy for expenses, for opportunities, you don't even know what those mechanics of how that even happens. Like, how do I reach out to the insurance company? How do I get is it a check? Is it a direct deposit? Like, just go through it. Take a simple loan out, buy something, or just take it out, pay it back, whatever you want to do. But just use it, get that familiarity with the process. And then you start to realize, I got this expense. I can just use it for that. Or I have this opportunity. I can use it for that. But if you never use it, you'll still get all the great, wonderful benefits of permanent whole life insurance, but you'll be missing out on recapturing the interest you could have been getting from other banks, or you'd be giving to other banks, or opportunities. So it's just, as John said, just use it and get that moving in your life.
Derek, what do you think about the Fortune article in 1995, which is amazing that it still applies today, with the common mistakes, like why people, and in this case, they're talking about EVA and for businesses, but it equates nicely to IBC. Like what are some highlights that you would point out for why people don't use it?
Yeah, for the listeners who don't have a copy of the book in front of them, some of the mistakes that John is alluding to is the fact that people don't make it a way of life, that the boss loses conviction or lacks conviction, and maybe that training gets cut short. And so how do these kind of mistakes apply to infinite banking? Nelson says that infinite banking does need to become like a way of life. And as we've shared some examples, that could either be by recapturing interest that you were paying to other bankers, or by funding other opportunities. But having access to that capital and control allows you to take advantage of those opportunities when they do come up. The boss lacking conviction. This is where somebody who maybe gets started with an infinite banking policy, but decides later on down the road that, hey, maybe this isn't right for me. Let us help you to see that this is still a valuable tool, and being able to give somebody that conviction that this is the best place to store your money while you're waiting for other opportunities to potentially come up. And we need to think about the training, the education that goes into this process. This is the purpose of the podcast, is to help our listeners understand, how do you do these things and how do I use it rather than lose it? And that's where this training, we can't have a short-minded, short-term thinking. We need to be thinking longer term and having a robust knowledge of, how this asset works and how this process works. And that's where we come in.
Exactly. Well said.
Yeah. I mean, I'll speak for myself, and I think Derek and Rob are along the same lines. Like, we also won't move forward unless we feel confident that whoever we're working with really does understand it. And it's a two-way street here, that we want to make sure anyone we work with is the most educated they could possibly be, up to the point that they pay their first premium and understand their IBC policy, and can really move forward with strength, rather than like dragging people into it. Or because if you drag someone into it, you're going to drag them the whole way, the rest of their policy probably. So we are very thorough to make sure anyone we work with understands it as well. So we're not just trying to quick sale and leave. We're trying to make sure this is something that can really benefit each and every person we work with for life and for generations. Lord willing.
Yep.
Well, guys, as we've wrapped up not only part 1, but also now part 2 of the book, just to kind of summarize what's happened so far, Nelson has laid out, what is infinite banking? What are some of the features that having your own banking system allows you, and what are the potential drawbacks or human problems that we need to be aware of when we're going to utilize this policy. In the next section of the book, Nelson's going to talk about building this banking system and giving examples, case studies, if you will, of how people have utilized these policies in the past. And we're going to bring this into modern day. We're going to try and provide you with current context, current examples as to how these policies would function today. And I hope that that's really illuminating to our audience and helping them grasp, like, okay, how do I actually use this policy with numbers that seem applicable to my current financial situation? If anything that we've talked about from the very beginning of the podcast to now sounds appealing and you'd like to get started, feel free to reach out to us at thefamilybankingshow@gmail.com. And from there, you'll be able to schedule time with one of us three, and we'd be happy to work with you. Guys, we'll see you in the next episode.
All right. Thanks, Derek. Thanks, John.
Thanks.
Thank you for joining us. If you're interested in a conversation about anything we've discussed, you can find our contact information in the show notes below.
And subscribe, follow, and leave a review to help spread this message and to help families across the country discover the generational blessing of IBC. May God bless you, and we'll see you next time.